Good morning. We're now live and welcome to the second of our roundtable events here at Future Workforce. And I'm really pleased today to be joined by a great panel who I'll get to introduce themselves. And today's discussion really is around for the media and entertainment industry and around how digital transformation is affected by automation and AI. So without further ado, let me go and address and discuss with our panel, all right, who they are and what they represent. So let's start with Priti Murthy.
Thanks, Alistair. Hi, everyone. And I am leading the Group M Services business for India, which actually is very well placed to the managing of client investments, to managing the executions, and to look at how we can better the processes using technology, and technology that's intelligent and doesn't make us work harder, but makes our life simpler. So that's my job and that's my role. And that also at one end is my passion, because obviously in India, we look at shortcuts for everything. And that's how I grew in terms of media planning. And I learned quick hacks and quick early years of Excel macros to go home on time, and many such, I wouldn't call it tech interventions then, but now more and more passionately driving that into the business, which keeps the employees happy at one end, because that reduces the strain on the business and running the operations, and also gives quicker delivery to clients. So the discussions with clients is not about how is my fund getting managed? It's about what returns am I getting? So these are the two ways I think technology is supporting and enabling work at Group M.
Excellent.
And that's about me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Priti. And now let's move over to Raj. Raj, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience today?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Raj Mohan Srinivasan. I'm working with Sony Pictures. I work as the Chief Information Officer. Just took this up almost 2 years back. I always jokingly say that I joined and then the COVID came. So it's almost like 2 years went with a good amount of lockdown. But I must say that that's a time where we also had the biggest digital transformation taken up. For my background, this is my 33rd year in the industry. I come from a business and a tech background. If I were to just put a split, 10 years I would say have been like large transformation consulting. I was part of the IBM transformation itself. 10 years I would say I've been a product. I've innovated some products and brought into market early stages of my life, and even the one which is the reason why I'm in Sony, the first media much before Hotstar, much before for this part of the globe, I brought the OTT platform back into the country. And the other 10, I would say, large transformation projects execution. So that's about me.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Raj. And next, let's turn to Seema Menon from Sirocco. Hi, Seema.
Hi, Alistair. Lovely to be here. So a quick introduction. My background has been in media. Like Priti and Raj, I spent good 20 years of my career in media, and the last 14 with Sony Pictures before I decided to do a transition into AI and ML, because that grabbed my attention. But like Raj mentioned, I did the transition just when COVID hit us, and it has been amazing learning experience, because I realized that the 2 years has accelerated digital transformation for many organizations who had it in their things to do for the next 5 years, and they had to do it much quicker. So I'm here to help organizations, support them, having been on the media side and now understanding how technology can help that particular transformation. Lovely to be here once again.
Great, thanks, Seema. And last but not least, Chris, how about introducing yourself?
Yeah, Chris Dunridge, I'm the VP of Sales for Sirocco across Europe. My background, I always like to say I did have a real job once upon a time. My background was working in finance, accounting and payroll when I very first started my career. I then gravitated towards technology and then spent nearly 7 years at Sage and 7 years at Deltek. But my time at Deltek, I was focused quite heavily on supporting organizations with professional service automation tools and working with some of the world's largest agencies such as WPP, Publicis, Omnicom. And then about 2 years ago, I was working at UiPath. So I was the MD for UK and Ireland, headed up the business in the UK and Ireland, and since April of last year, joined Sirocco to help drive our products with our customers. So delighted to be part of this roundtable and meet everyone here.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Thanks to everyone for your introductions. So let's kick off with our first real question, and let's head this off to Priti. So Priti, why do media organisations need to transform digitally? So
I can talk from the media and media planning industry in India. When I started my career, there were 4 TV channels. Today we are talking about 900. Digital was just display advertising. Today there are so many elements of this digital advertising that is inexplainable to a layman, right? Now everything can't be A, people dependent, B, manually done, and when the scale gets larger, it's practically not possible to manage your operations in the same scale of delivery and excellence that you want to drive. If that is the case, what do we do? I think that is where your, like you're rightly putting, intelligent automation comes in, because the future workforce is not, I have an 8-year-old who's born in a digital era. For him, swiping right or left is not a thing you're teaching them. Or he's coding already. They're creating stuff by themselves. So this is the future workforce. They do not understand writing so much as typing and maybe talking into the Word document. So if this is where the beginner's language has changed, we have got no choice, I guess, to look at it very differently. And this is my realization, because I'm now a little on the older side of 40s, that when we started, we tried to run organizations that way when we reach into a senior role of a president or CEO, whatever designation you get. But you need to realize that when you sit in the position, you need to enable work for a 25-year-old or a 28-year-old. And they are a different generation. They work very differently. And how can technology provide those solutions to bring out the excellence in work from them? And that is one of the human need of why we need to do it. From a business and a P&L angle, pure efficiency metrics have to be set aside. Standardization is another big challenge, which I think in industry like manufacturing and consulting and all I've seen. But for advertising, standardization from a trading and investment perspective exists. But from an overall operational, it is always a dichotomy, right? We live in 2 worlds when you look in the media industry. So the reality is we have to change. And we've changed. And we've changed for the better. Is it enough? No. But there's at least a great beginning that we are seeing in the market. And so 10 years back, what was called automation is no more that. It's much more advanced. It's much more relevant. And the good part is we're not waiting for 7-8 years to change it. We change it every 24 months. So that is where the pace at is today. Is it right, wrong? Is the pace should be 12 months? We don't know. But at the same breath, we are also faced with huge investments in that foray. So how do we make a smarter decision, a smarter solution deployment? This is a question that I keep asking myself. And that is where organizations will look up to me to deliver that. Okay. I guess that answers your point.
No, that's a great answer. I think let's fire the same question to Raj, because you're from a different side of the media side of business. So what about yourself? Where do you think that need is to transform digitally?
I think, I always go back to the basics, right? I mean, if you look at it, is digital transformation new? I mean, the word transformation is not new, right? I always believe that, it goes back to your, as we friendly say, PPT, right? People, process, technology, right? The transformation for any organization has to be revolving around these 3 fundamental tenets. I think, in the early 80s, mid 80s, mid 90s, it was more of, process transformation. You had the Michael Amherst of the world. They came back and said that don't automate, obliterate, look at the process, and then look at the automation. I think it's a vicious cycle, Then came, how do we dovetail these process changes with technology? I think that the next 10 years went on, how do I make the technology aligned to the business processes which changed or need to be changed? Now, I think the current era, whether it is media industry or even across industries, now why there's a need for a transformation and why it has to be enabled through the digital, I think it's a coming together of all these three, right? Now, people across the industries, and so do media, it has to be together. It can't be, process changes stands alone, and the people enablement or how do they accommodate to these transformed world can't be handled differently, and the tech or the digital will be integral part of the other two. So from a standpoint of why digital transformation, I must say that there are 2-3 factors, external factors, which tells us, and I've always believed that there's nothing like a change, right? It's because it keeps evolving. What was new yesterday is no longer new today, right? And there's a new tomorrow which is going to come, right? So in my perspective, why now is because that if we need to be relevant and if we need to scale, right? We need to have this evolving mindset that's better enabled and scaled with digitally enabled or digitally transformed organization, so that you have more agile processes and you have people whose mindset are digitally tuned, right? Today, I think I will just pick on what Preeti said, right? I think, she's absolutely bang on. I think we are all from the, the baby boomers, and the minute you see these millennial kids or even the kids beyond that, they are born digitally, right? To them, digital is the only world that they know, right? We need to catch up with them. I think from a personal pressure, I think we all need to keep pace with them, and therefore we need to do the digital transformation to keep ourselves up in the race as well. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So completely out of context, but I'd sit down and chat with my son. Both my sons were at university, right? And I remember writing dissertations out of hand. They just speak into Word, right? And there you go and adjust. So the digital adjuster started, right? So lectures.
If you were to look at it, why for media now? I would definitely say that gone are the days, right? I think, from the time the media content used to, if you had to get a content, you need to have those production setup, studios. Today, content by whiff of, just a few seconds, right? Somebody can just take that clip, and with the kind of phones that we have, the smartphones, it gives you even a 4K clarity video output, right? So I think the content gets created on the move. So unless we have agile ways of, how do I acquire these content? How do I put them into a proper channel, and how do I monetize it? I think from a media perspective, I would say digital transformation is here and now. It's not about have to evolve. I think that's another important aspect from a media perspective.
100%, and that you're right, because that consumption of media as well, right? From multiple, it's multi-generations now. Coming the YouTube generation, right? The TikTok generation, the short form content and understanding is kind of key and formed and being touched digitally because they want to consume it where they want to do it, when they want to do it, etc. Chris, have you got, you've got a wide experience of seeing this across different industries as well in terms of the transformations that are happening and what's driving on. What are you seeing across a wider range of organizations at this moment in time?
I think it's the same across every organization, and I would probably start by saying, I don't really know of many organizations that aren't people-centric or have not understood that people build businesses, not businesses build businesses. But especially with media companies in general, their audience are individuals or potentially even groups of people. But at the same time, it's a very personalized piece of work. And so when you think about that kind of people-centric nature of how organizations are growing and evolving, like the first thing I would come to is, and it's very much linked to exactly all the same comments of all three of you, is that I call that bottom-up pressure. You know, no one can run an organization now that would bring, you know, graduates straight out of university and sit them in front of a terminal and get them to use green screen applications and tab through 1,000 screens just to input some data into an ERP. But actually, 10 years ago, we were expected to do that. People were expected to do that, to act like robots, to do repetitive tasks, often to the detriment of the quality of the work that could get undertaken in the time. And I think the employee experience piece that Raj and Preeti both alluded to there is actually, to me, one of the biggest motivators, that bottom-up pressure. And there's a few reasons for that. First of all, no one wants to join any sexy company like GroupM or Sony Pictures to then go and do mundane work. They thought they were joining really cool companies. And then if they're made to do stuff that doesn't enrich them as a valuable employee in that company, then we're going to even hit the attrition problem even harder in terms of people just leaving because you're not getting value from them. So I think digital transformation has to put individuals first and the experience they have as employees. But secondly, that bottom-up pressure is because they're also the ones that are facing off to the customers, whether they're in finance with the suppliers, whether they are in, you know, production services with the end client looking at the product. You know, they have to deliver an amazing experience is what they're measured against. And if the systems, the solutions, the processes, the ways in which they're being asked to work deliver a poor customer experience, then that bottom-up pressure gets even bigger. And I think that sort of the speed and pace of like transformation or just digital transformation, although I hate that term, digital transformation, because it's so nebulous and means so many things to so many different people. But those previous comments about customer and employee experience mean that there is no such thing as faster, because you can never get faster. It's always a demand to do things quicker, faster, better. And I honestly speak to so many people who have queues of work and prioritize lists of what is the next opportunity to undertake in terms of efficiency gain or application changing or just basically changing the way that the business works for the better of the customers and the employees. But I always finish on one, which I think is the always on pressure on digital transformation, which is risk and compliance. You know, with all of this pace of change in the industry sector, it's very easy to make mistakes along the way that can expose you to, you know, lots and lots of different risks. Risks of servicing that customer by not managing their data properly or by not managing the way in which you work with them is a huge risk to the business and also to lots of other risks that can be regulatory. But from a compliance standpoint, you know, we at Sirocco spend a substantial amount of time looking at people that are undertaking business critical processes that are finding ways of contravening those because the process or the way in which they're being asked to work doesn't actually support getting things done for the customer in the right way. But in taking like bypasses and side routes, they open themselves up for huge compliance challenges, and they may miss critical steps of what's required to deliver on a great customer experience. So I think those are like four things, you know, employee experience, customer experience, accelerating digital transformation, and obviously reducing risk and increasing compliance. They like remain the four pillars that nearly every program is run under. And I think they really summarize what companies need to kind of prioritize when they come to thinking about, you know, how to digitally transform, whether they be media, banking, financial services. It's really in those four boxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree as well. Seema, would you like to anything you'd like to add there from any of the other anything the other panelists have already said?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I do think, you know, customer experience is very important. And this customer could be both internal or external customers, because everyone is now on a always switched on mode, so used to having access to gadgets, and they expect the same from their personal life in their work life too. So if a customer is interacting with an organization, they need to be responded to immediately. They don't have the patience for that, and that puts a lot of pressure on an organization to be agile and to be aware that any form of digital presence that they have, they all link together so that there is one customer profile that's there to address to. And like Chris mentioned, that maintaining internal talent and employee satisfaction is very important. I mean, agencies have seen 30% turnaround time if people leave, and the mass exodus that's happening now, triggered by the lockdown. So it's very important to ensure that the relevant tools are provided to the team members so that they can perform to their best. And it's no longer an organization that that looks upon or instructs their teams to perform in a certain way. So they need to have all the tools that will help them to work efficiently, as well as to get rid of all the manual repetitive tasks that's there. So as organizations to be agile in this space, it's very important for them to look within and see which are the user applications that they need to keep updating so that it gives a better experience both to internal and external customers. And I think that's very, it can't be a major upheaval that happens once in a few years. It is a constant change and constant small changes that keep happening throughout to ensure that experience is important, because customers today sitting on the driver's seat. So you need to ensure that you retain that customer as an organization. Yeah.
It's a good point, actually, because we see that continuation piece is something that we see certainly in some organizations that have gone through their first reiteration of the digital transformation. And now it's that, how do we get even better? How can we improve that? How do we get even more return? And it's that constant piece as well. So on that kind of takes me to some of the points you made there, raised, and some of the challenges as well, because that's the why. So Raj, if I can ask you, what are the challenges that you see that then bring yourself up internally in an organization when you want to go through that digital transformation and start and commence that project?
Sure. I think, let me put that into three different set of challenges, right? One is like the need, right? What is the need for this transformation, right? Establishing that is where the first set of challenges come in. Because if you win that, you are actually winning 50% of the battle, right? So that's the first challenge, or we call this as the moments of inertia. Like when we are venturing into this digital transformation that we started off, the initial conceptual thing, it started way back in, I would say, March 2020. And then it took some time to formulate and establish the need for change in status quo, right? Why do we need? So I would say that there are initial set of challenges, which is to break those moments of inertia, that I would say. That's one set of challenge, I would say. Then on the journey, right, when we got into in the month of April to September, when we sat together and then said that now that we've established that why we need to change, once you start getting into what should change and how do you change and who should change, right? That's the orchestration or the articulation of what is the digital transformation. That's a second set of challenges that you bump into when you actually into the digital transformation, right? Then comes, give them these digital solutions, which tells the comfort, the way we've solved it. We never said that I'm going to take the prescriptive approach. Let's articulate the problem together. Let's sit together and find the solutions, right? As a tech team or, you can only show them that these are the possibilities. These are the digital disruptions or the solutions which can probably come into fore. Make them part of the solution making, right? That's the second challenge that we did face. Once it gets into the build mode, right? Obviously, I don't want to repeat that. I'm sure each and every one of us in our large scale, rollout, you have those typical challenges. That's a standard challenge. I'm not even saying that. But from a quantum of challenge that you need to really address is a challenge that we are going through as we speak, is how am I going to make this work, right? The change experience, or the way when the rubber meets the road, it is evident that you're going to have those pressure points. You're going to have those pressure moments, even though the person who crafted the solution, when he or she gets into the acceptance of it, there's going to be resistance, right? There's going to be challenges which are going to come in the way. Since your question is, what are the challenges? I'm not giving you the solutions. No. Let me reserve the for the next question.
Excellent. No, thank you for that, Zaz. And Priti, over to you, because obviously, again, a different branch of the media business. What are the things that you've had to overcome and the types of challenges you've seen within your organisation?
So there are different perspectives that I've seen in different avatars of mine in this organization. This is my second stint. I was doing an agency role earlier, and now I'm doing a group role. And what I'm realizing is that because it's part of a global ecosystem, there's lots of future gazing and thinking that's already happening all the time. Because as part of WPP, you get to do that. So what we are doing today, there are some people sitting out who are already thinking 4 years hence. So that's fantastic. Yet by the time it comes to India, it takes its time, though India is always on priority one. India, China is like how they speak. India, China, Australia, P1 market, we'll get the rollouts done. But the reality of each local market sometimes gets missed out. And it's a daily challenge. Like India is still TV heavy. India, though digital is growing at a very fast pace, the dependence of TV is also growing. A lot of new age clients, what Seema was talking about, immediate accountability. They want campaigns rolled out in an hour in television because they are all an app-based business. And they want immediate action because then they can measure whether the downloads have increased, the transaction value has increased. I mean, that's real-time media planning, which is a different ecosystem. So these kind of challenges of how the transaction happening and how we can marry the transformation agenda to that is more then and now versus the vision. So how do you balance this? And how does the local market then, people like me, have to come in and support that and create a local solution and enable the team and balance the vision with it. So these are few areas I feel are real life on the floor challenges that we deal with every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, got it. And Seema, I guess same thing for you really in terms of what you're seeing across the account bases that you deal with and organisations and other organisations you deal with. What are you seeing their challenges being as they go through digital transformation?
According to me, I think the biggest challenge is culture, managing the culture of the organization. So it's, like Raj mentioned, one of the challenge would be you are implementing a huge digital transformation or within the organization. What is the acceptability? What is the usability of that by the team members? What are the fears that the employees have? Are they, is there a fear that they would be replaced by the technology that's coming in, by the automation that's happening? So it's very important to get the buy-in from the team and explain to them what is the changing culture of the organization, get their buy-in and make them a part of the journey. The insiders need to be a part of the journey rather than getting someone from outside to come do an overview and go out. Involve the insiders in this entire transformation journey, because once they are part of that, they then are more acceptable and they accept the transformation. I mean, there was a study which was done by HBR, I think a few years back, where they said $1 trillion was invested for digital transformation, out of which $900 billion went waste. Because though the companies implemented it, they forgot to take care of the culture of the organization and involve the members within that transformation. And with another $2 trillion being invested this year, I think this is a major element that organizations need to look at.
Okay. All right. Chris, thank you very much, Seema. Chris, what about you? What else are you seeing out there?
I'm just thinking about that $1 trillion and the portions of it that I could help organisations with if they were to give me a fraction. But I just keeping it really simple, not to repeat what Priti and Raj said. I always think about the industry sector, before I think about the pressure, and especially in like media and entertainment, like it's the hardest thing to do, because every single thing you do as a business is balancing creativity with profitability. Because if you gave the entire, and I would say more of the creatives within the digital world, the ability to deliver the products for the customers, then the businesses wouldn't exist, because most of these creatives joined the business to create amazing products, but not necessarily in the cheapest way, but with the highest quality. So actually media organizations have a real challenge to make sure that their end product is delivered on time and on budget for their customers, but doesn't actually mean that they're over-servicing everything for the great experience. That then means that they see no profit margins at the end of delivering that. And that's a really hard, like, North Star to have as a business, while still then needing to digitally transform underneath that. And I meet with a lot of CIOs, and have met with lots of CIOs, and I always think it's a very brave role, because the demand is immediate. I want transformation now. My knowledge workers need this. They need tools. They need everything that you can imagine in place that has this immediate factor. And Seema, your point was really, really good about the spend, because you can spend money like drunken sailors on technology and transformation now, but actually unless you have a vision of where you want to end up, you're transforming for the sake of transformation, not with an outcome in mind. And the CIOs that I've always found incredibly brave are those ones that don't want to say, hey, I want to just put this in tomorrow and then worry about the detail later. They have a strategy and a glide path towards the end goal, which might mean that there is short-term sacrifices to the strategy in terms of saying, hey, we can't do this overnight because it's not going to deliver the outcomes. We want to think about it more carefully and actually spend $1 million and deliver $1 million's worth of benefit, not spend $1 million and then spend another $1 million and then spend another $1 million just servicing the immediate demand. And whilst I don't think that answers any questions, I think it shows you the problem again, which is faced by that balance of creativity, profitability, and doing the right thing for the business, not where it is today, but where it needs to be in 6 months, 12 months, and God forbid, planning any further than that in this current climate. So yeah, I think Priti and Raj's points were very on point.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree actually with all of that. It's that balancing act, right? It's always been a balancing act, and it's how you drive it. So we talked about a couple of things there. Cultural shift, right? Cultural change, because both Priti, both Raj, and we've all mentioned it and discussed it. There's lots of different range of generations within an organisation, and that's a big cultural change. And as we all know, then there's a lot of people that are probably like, that's not how we do it, right? That's the way we do it. So if I find out across the first question to you, Priti, what are some of the cultural changes and challenges you've had to deal with as well? Because we mentioned some of the shift in organisations thinking and because of the whys, but what are the actual cultural challenges you have as well?
I think the biggest cultural challenge which I am facing across GroupM and my early avatars is in terms of, I've done it like this in so many years, it's worked perfectly well, why do you want me to change? There's a constant question, what is automation going to give me that my intelligence can't contribute? And the underlying, what Seema mentioned, the fear of losing my job, or that could be the underlying motives. But also it's the comfort of doing things. I wake up in the morning, I come to office, I do 4 clicks, 5 Excels, 6 PPTs, get out. It's just the routine. It's just the routine. Any shift, transformation is asking me to unlearn that and learn something new. And I guess when somebody said about the larger vision, and that's not getting communicated to people, the reverse question is, if so much gets communicated to people, then who'll do the jobs, and everybody's visioning, right? So it's kind of that kind of a challenge where how much is enough to share, and when do you stop sharing and doing? And the cultural shift is that where, I've seen organizations going through complete open culture and unable to do transformation. I've also worked in organizations where it's a little autocratic, has done transformations. So it's a mixed bag of sorts. What should be the right blend? Where should you start, stop, continue in the classic sense? or one should, the other question that I believe is a big pink elephant in the room, which nobody calls out, is who's the right person to lead it? Is it somebody who understands business? Is it somebody who understands technology? Or is it somebody who understands human resourcing or human mindset? So is it HR, is it CIO, CTOs, or is it some CXO from the business? Now, that again, the answers could be depends, you're what kind of an organization, are you finance-led, are you IT-led, people talk like that, but it isn't so. It's a very basic question of who can wield the teams for the transformation, who can inspire them to put it out there and say, let's go for it. Can I get 50% momentum into transformation with a CIO or a CTO or a CHRO? I don't know. It all depends on a lot of individual capabilities as well. And how much might are we putting behind, not in terms of money, but the shift in behavior to adapt to this change as leaders. I think a lot comes with that, because if somebody in many places, like I come and talk in such a forum like this, and then I go back and do my old way of working, my team will say that you have a different picture outside and then you have a different picture inside. So, all these things also matter. And I think these are the few hurdles that I see for cultural shifts.
Okay, all right, sounds really interesting. So, yes. Raj, same question to you really, because you're again like Preeti, you're part of a much larger organisation with the brand of Sony. How do you see that as part of cultural shift? Because not only within your own side, but obviously that's got to get buy-in from the mothership and the organisation as well.
Yeah, it's a like what Preeti was also saying, accepting that there is a need for such a change. The resistance starts from there, right? The daily routine of I come there, couple of coffees and couple of PPTs, like she said, the very thought of moving away from that to a different environment, which is not very different. They can still have the same coffee and they come back, and then it's not the Excel, probably they get into an application, right? I think it's a change in mindset. That's definitely a challenge, right? Now, but the way we've conquered, right? No, I should touch wood, conquering rather, I can't say conquered because, we are in the last leg, and I'm sure we will get that through, right? We've done like set of mitigation, I would say. The challenges that we faced and the way we mitigated, probably it will also be of interest to you. Like I said, who owns it? How do you move the mountains? Is it 1, 2, 3, or the entire? That's the answer. That's exactly what we said. It's not, while I might have constituted the so-called digital transformation, the first thing that I did is I set up a digital transformation office. The first note that we sent from my CEO saying that while it is being driven from the CIO's office, it doesn't belong to CIO. It belongs to the CXOs. Make them part of those cultural change. Make them own every bit of carving out what that future is. So then they ensure that their respective work streams or their organization are done the alignment, right? That's one part which we have done. So, and then the other challenge, like as we go into the execution mode and to the adoption mode, this is where we have set up this, we call this, okay, it's not trademark, but it's almost like very dear to my heart. We don't like this word change management. So I said, I don't want to call this as change management. We'll call this as change experience, right? We have set up what we call a CEXO. I call this as CXO. The message is, it's the responsibility of every CXO to make this cultural change happen. So it doesn't belong to just, let's say, one CIO or let's say the CHRO or any other enabling functions. It's equally responsible from each of the CXOs. It could come from the business team. The CXO could be the business leader. The CXO could be the finance leader. The CXO could be the content leader. The CXO could be the general counsel, whoever it is, right? So the DTO, what we constructed itself, we had some 4 steering teams which owns the respective DTO initiatives. And then we said that you are part of the CXO. You have to make it happen. So the moving the mountains is the biggest culture that I see. And I feel that it's a joint responsibility. So this is how we are handling. Touch wood. Hopefully it goes through.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Seema, let's come back to you. I mean, again, you see this in widespread of organizations, and you've sat both the client side as well as obviously now in the side of the technologist. What do you see some of the cultural challenges that people see across the board? You're on mute, Seema.
It still continues, right? 2020, 2021, and now in 2022.
Yeah.
So in terms of cultural challenges, like I alluded to earlier, I think there's a fear internally amongst the team members, the internal team members, but the new generation employees are ready for that change. They want that change. They want to be able to move faster and learn faster and grow faster. They are from the digital world. They don't have to adopt it. They are living in that space. So it's very important for organizations to give that experience to them and involve them in that journey. Give that vision, share that vision with them so that they feel part of the entire journey and they are creating that transformation. At one point in agencies, programmatic was supposed to be automation, but programmatic did not do that, right? It did not give the time back to the agency team. It just made the employees work longer hours to do something which was being done better before. Probably. So I think creating that autonomous environment and giving tools which gives them more time while improving your profit bottom line is very important. And it has to be a continuous improvement process. So if you do something now and you feel that's it, you would have seen that your technology is galloped far faster by the time you've implemented it. So you need to have that constant improvement and constantly looking at processes, constantly looking at how work is being done and mapping it regularly to ensure that your organization is always ready for the next big change.
Yeah, then cultural shift. I mean, Chris, and you and I both seen that coming from an automation background and certainly from an RPA perspective as well. What else? What are you seeing as some of the cultural challenges and cultural shifts that need to happen within organisations?
I mean, it's tough for me to not answer this one from a technology standpoint in terms of solutioning, but I won't because I think Seema made a great point, and I think stole my answer more importantly. But actually, culture change is always is difficult, and there's always a fear motivation, as Seema said. It's not fear of like stuff that they can see. It's fear of the unknown, and I really feel like that is everyone's hidden kryptonite. Is that it's the fear of the unknown. What might happen tomorrow? That's always what's motivating us to move forward, but it's also what changes our behavior and affects the culture of how people might lock down or open up to change. And let's just think about what changes people's culture, what changes people's mindset in education. Education about the opportunities outside of that. And so I would always be looking at this from how do we remove fear through education? But when you're thinking very specifically around this topic, it's digital transformation, not fear that they're going to stop me drinking my coffee in the morning. It'll be fear that they'll take away my purpose within the business. And actually, you're right, Alistair. We've spent a lot of time in the RPA sector trying to explain that robots are not going to take people's jobs. And in fact, it's a net job promoter in terms of creating additional opportunity. But you've got to explain to employees and educate and really showcase to them what the alternative looks like. if we free up knowledge workers from doing manual repetitive tasks, even in contact centers, you know, they don't go, they actually move on to purposeful higher value work that they're actually not able to aim for and obtain because they're stuck in the drudgery. And that goes from, you know, finance and accounting, just keying data from one system into another, through to, you know, people who are delivering work on for clients, like big blue chip clients, but actually have to stop halfway through all of the great work they're doing to fill out a timesheet or to update a project plan or do something that actually breaks the flow of what they're doing, but it's just the way that they've always worked. And so I think that the role, and Raj absolutely loved change experience rather than change management. That is a fantastic way of thinking. You know, document that. You should quote that, and by all means try and trademark it. I think you might fail, but you know, it'd still be a great way to get the world to think about changing the experience that people have and who's responsible for driving that cultural shift. But like, it just comes back to fear and education for me. Let's identify the fears and educate on what the alternative might look like, so that then when you're delivering change experience, you're not just giving people vagaries and random potential outcomes that aren't predictable or aren't really something you can put a KPI against or a commitment to deliver. And I think that's the biggest obligation of companies is to know where the fear exists and clear that out of the business, because that can have an absolutely meteoric change on employee culture and the I'm trying to think of the right word here, but the mindset of people that are then embracing change.
Yeah, I've seen it. I mean, I was like you and all of you, and Raj, both something you said and also Pretty something you said as well. In fact, something you've all said, right? There's components of it. Cultural change sort of needs to happen from inside. And one of the best cultural change programs I've seen as part of a digital exchange was actually a reversing of coaching and ambassadorial roles by a younger generation working with an older generation part of the organization, and actually having that demonstration and show of what changes and what moves forward quicker to the, well, look, this is the reason why I can do this quickly. And it's amazing how it catches on and that reverse whole coaching piece works. So I think, yes, I think it constantly is. Yes, there's always a fear of the unknown. I think it's a great point, Chris, and we've seen it many, many times. But I do think these, again, one of the things that's driven a lot of change has been the pandemic as well, and people a little bit more open to change and maybe more flexible that will come and drive in. So it's good, and I'm great we've all got experience on that. So let's bring us back to the point around where do we start with technology, all right? Because we've talked about culture, we've talked about people, we've talked about the why. What are the types of technologies that we look to employ as part of this change? Because we've all been used to big IT systems and big pieces, and now really it's AI and automation. It's a different stack than it was from a while back, and from the broadcasting stack, from playout and various things of recording, all of those componentry, that's changed as well. So Pretty, if I can start with you, what are the types of technologies you've seen have come in that are part of digital transformation that are starting to help address the points, but more importantly, take the organization forward?
Yeah, and I'm going to give an example of my journey with GroupM. I joined my first stint in 2004. I got a printed offer letter outside an old restaurant outside our Bombay office. There was no HR. There was just finance handing over offer letters. And you joined on a desktop computer. Pre-joining forms, automated. Everything was online. I just had to click. My laptop was delivered home, already assigned. And that seems to be quite a norm for the current generation now. And I keep reminding them, you are bloody lucky. Because it's not that easy to automate even basic stuff like joining an organization. That is as simple as that. At the same time, I think the other big change is the way we plan for our clients. There was a lot of manual work that we used to do. I would say that's come down by almost 50%. The endeavor is to get it down by 75% because the machine does the machine job and we do more of thinking. Currently, it's 50% thinking, 50% doing time, right? So reportings have got automated, measurement have got automated to a large extent, partial processes in the way we do campaign management has got automated, specifically in the television side, because in the digital side, the platforms provide for most of it. Like you go on Google platform, go on a Facebook platform, blah, blah, blah. And it's all self-serve to a large extent. But when you come to television, it's not self-serve as much in India. And you have 900 channels to plan for and then figure out of that 100 channels that you need in a campaign, it's not an easy job. And if we can get that automated, which we have done to a large extent, it's amazing. And how we present it back to the clients, I think that is another critical component. This is at the front end and the entry level. At the middle level, the internal ecosystem was also seeing a huge transformation. And one of the way technology has enabled it is performance management, most abused ecosystem in any systems, right? Automation around that. And the fact that you have history of an individual after they quit also in the automation system, because everything is logged in and it's registered and it's cloud-based. HR ecosystems talking to finance ecosystems and the data matching. These are some elements that are very critical to running an organization. The future focus projects which we are currently deploying is which are in the workflow space, and how can I improve the process ecosystem? And I think that's where we are going to unlearn some of the old habits and learn new habits. And I think that's the space my energies is going on now, the whole workflow ecosystem. And the end result of it is a better delivery ecosystem to the client and better extractions for the agencies to work upon future projects that can automate even further.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. That's quite a extensive answer. And Raj, over to you. And I know as a CIO, you've got half an eye and interest on technology as well as the change of people and culture and everything else that goes on. So staying to you, what are the types of technologies that you look to deploy as part of this that aren't the tradition and move you forward?
I always look at putting some method to the madness, right? I think, we always want to put some structure to the whole thing. I see this done in 3 layers. I call the first layer as the foundational layer, which are more like the foundational technologies that you need to put in place, right? It could be, the change in your ERP platform or your regular stuff like, what you need to do with your CRM, the whole value chain automation in terms of, how you connect from your customer relationship management or your stay connect with change experience all the way through your down the line productivity levers like your ERP or your data lake. So all that to me is a foundational layer, right? As we speak, the digital transformation, the first pass that we are also trying to do in the next couple of months is also for this foundational technologies. These are more like, long-term. You don't get to change them every transformation agenda, right? These are more like your robust platforms that needs to be there for at least for 3 to 5 years. So that I call that as one tech block. You can call that as an enterprise tech block, right? Then comes the second layer, which is more a flexible layer, okay, which is going to bring in those so-called agile innovation or agile acceleration for your continuous innovation or continuous tech interventions that can be brought into your foundational layer to get some incremental benefits or incremental that in a way is going to help in this cultural challenge that we are talking about, right? Then the third part is where you look at these digital disruptions, right? It's one of those, which is going to really make it to a big one, right? You don't need to do anything. It's like a mutual induction, like Alistair, you're talking about, the youngsters automatically influencing the older population. It's something like that, right? You realize you've not done any digital transformation. You've not done any cultural change. There are certain technology, like for instance, this adoption of, let's say, Zoom or Teams or whatever. I mean, look at it. It's adopted, right? Did we have any change experience of us? Nothing, right? So it's a mutual induction, so looking for those technology to me is the third creamy layer, which we need to look for. I don't think you can start looking out for it in, at the stage of making those foundational tech capabilities. Of course, you'll find them, path them, don't mess it up. So that's what I call it, as putting some method to the madness. Because if you try to do those at the time of when you're doing this foundational, you're going to get mixed up and messed up. So, I would think this is how I would look at technology. And I think, I'm sure Sirocco guys are going to really like what I'm going to say just now. I mean, the biggest thing in all these, whether it is a foundational layer or your agile accelerators or these exponential, the biggest challenge is going to be on the glue, right? How are we going to integrate them? How are we going to make, nobody is interested, which ERP is throwing up this report. As long as you have a intelligent automation orchestrator layer, which actually plays across these foundation layers or your agile accelerators or to your, those exponential things, which has already become a way of life. I think the trick is in these smart automation or these intelligent automation layer. I think that's the technology which is going to do the magic of integrating all these three levers.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with that last point, actually, because we're seeing that, you've grown up with silos of technology and investments, and it's how do you integrate that? How do you get out of that an overall report, right? For example, the health of the business in real time from all these various systems, because they all work well individually, but then try and talk to each other, and that becomes the glue, right? And the sticky piece. We see it. Chris, same question for you, because and I know, and you're a technologist, right? With a vendor and a technology out there that is unique in terms of what it does. But what are you seeing? What are you seeing that adoption rate? Not only just obviously from your own technology, but what else are you seeing from the technology stacks that are coming into play for people to be able to really accelerate these digital transformations?
So Raj is right. I did like his answer. I really did like his answer, but I don't have a fantastic answer to this question, truthfully, because I don't believe many people in organizations do either. And I say this with full respect, is many people's infrastructures and the technologies that they've adopted have been point-in-time choices that they've had to make based on, the applications that exist to service a need at that point in time. And many of those are de facto tools that an organization of a certain size may have to use. The SAPs, the Oracles, the Salesforces, the ServiceNows. These tools have risen to their prominence in the market because of their ability to service the broadest, not all, but the broadest amount of a customer's requirements. And guess what? They're also customizable. But herein lies the problem. That word, customizable, has been also the biggest pain that many enterprise organizations faced, because you customize an application, you become completely wedded to the way in which it works, and then guess what? There's an upgrade, and that product is end of life. Christ, what's the price to move from version this to version that? Oh, really? That seems to be like quite extreme. And then the world goes into turmoil and tries to work out, hang on a second, what are the alternatives? And so people go into refreshing their view on, is this the right application for us to move forward with? They might make a decision, they might not. That is just what's happened in the last, 40, 50 years since IBM mainframe through to, SAP S4HANA. But still to this day, I don't believe customers or, any organization truly understands that what they have in infrastructure is the right plumbing for their organization. And they can never be 100% confident. And they can be pioneers even and still know there's lots of areas to address within a business. And the reason why I love Raj's comment is because that's why we exist as a business. Sirocco came into existence when we spotted a gap in the market. There are some fantastic process mining tools that can let you look inside your enterprise applications and understand where they are inefficient from an inside out perspective. And there are other tools that can look at task mining as a good example to work out the people on the ground, the human action, and how they interact with applications, how that works. Whereas Sirocco came into existence to create something that sits between both of those, and it's called the work graph. And this isn't a pitch, but it really is just contextualizing why we believe it's a tool that organizations need to think about Because imagine if Google was going out to create Google Maps and all they did was just take pictures of the buildings and look inside them. They didn't understand how the roads connected those buildings. They didn't understand how the people moved across that map. They didn't understand how the delivery drivers were taking things from one side to the other. They could only really understand what exists on the map, not how it all interconnects. And that is what we as a business in our category of technology, the Work Graph, are setting out to help enterprise organizations leverage. It's not something that's going to be able to be done overnight. Assessing an enterprise organization, the infrastructure they have, where the applications do their job, where they don't, where they create inefficiency, where humans are asked to navigate across that map without a map, is something which takes a bit of time to develop. But I go back to my previous answer. I don't have a great answer for what digital technologies should be leveraged to empower media organizations to make better of what they actually do. I think they need to understand what they do presently before they make any of those decisions in the future. And I think that path to sustainable and intelligently thought out automation and software deployments and consulting comes back to my previous comment around education. Let's really understand what we have to do before we then go and buy something to do it. Over. I'll stop, Alistair, I promise.
No, it's all right. I don't disagree. We've still got a few minutes left to say. Seema, you CC things all the time as well, and you've been, again, both sides of the fence, all right, if you like, in terms of, provider of technology as well as consumer technology. Where do you see the uptake, and where do you see the adoption, which particular technologies you see getting adopted as part of this transformation?
Was this question for me, Alistair?
Yeah, so just
Sorry,
a follow-up really. It was a follow-on part of the technologies. What are the technologies you see being deployed by organisations to help them in terms of their digital transformation beyond the standard stack of tech?
I think in terms of technologies being deployed by organizations, you can take the state-of-the-art technology at this point of time, and you will find that it works well as long as you're not being, very, what's the right term? Being very conscious about keeping the data within your organization and on-premise, because like Chris mentioned, the moment there is an upgrade, you find that you are no longer able to upgrade and be on quick interaction time with your clients simply because you're not on cloud. So what I find a lot of organizations are doing is building on their business partnerships, because if you have to be competitive in today's world, you can't be working in isolation and getting all the technology that works for you. It's very important to work with technology partners at this point to keep updating yourself to ensure that you're ahead of the curve, and I think that's where this comes into play.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. We certainly see it across the board. And we get asked it a lot, right? As a consultancy, we get asked a lot of these times is to help understand our business, right? And that's the key thing. We understand the business of the client, but more importantly, it's understanding actually what is a right fit and what isn't a right fit, and what's necessity and what's just the fluff of the moment. All right. And that's the nice big sparkly thing that we should all go to. And it's like, well, actually, that's not going to fit and do you and plug, and it's going to actually cause you further problems down the line. So we see a lot of that as well, and being able to pick the right tools for the right job, but also to Raj's point is whatever you invest in is a good foundation for further development down the road as well. It's not a pointing solution anymore. It's something that actually you can utilize to consistently improve, and it will help you on that journey as well. Okay, so last question really before we kind of do a roundup and a summarization is, how do you measure the success of a digital transformation project? Because we all report into boards, and metrics are the most important thing of any organization, is understanding the health of it and where it sits. So Raj, let's start with you, because you mentioned embedding the CXO, all right, and the CXOs within the being the change agents themselves as well. What are the metrics and how do you measure success of any digital transformation project?
it isn't an easy answer. I'll tell you the reason, right? You're comparing two different points of reference. So prior to the digital transformation, the very predicament of we saying that, okay, let's venture into this digital transformation is by citing some of those foundational KPIs, like, the TAT around some of these process outcomes, some of the inefficiencies that we have, and, costs that we spend. All those are, to me, those standard KPIs. That's the very purpose of your investment case. To me, saying that that's a KPI is a no-brainer. That's the very purpose of putting my money. And am I getting the ROI? See, no longer the CIOs or, the tech guys, right? They are also supposed to be thinking like an investment person, right? So to me, if I say that that's a KPI, I would be wrong, because, that's expected. It's like saying my product has quality. Okay, that's expected to be given, right? That's a standard that I expect. Now, so then what's the other KPI that you're really talking about? So in my view, one of the reasons, like as you rightly said, the Change Experience Office is also to set up to baseline those, right? To me, the point of reference gets created after you transform, during the foundational capabilities are being established. Start capturing those baselines. That becomes your starting point. That's not the end goal. Start saying an end goal from there. Year on year, what are those improvements that you're trying to achieve? And what are those exponential things that you're, exactly like a VC, right? How do I get my 2x or 3x 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line? To me, I think that's the only KPI which matters. I mean, I don't know, is that the right approach? I don't know, but I think that's the approach that we wanted to take in our journey.
That's good. And, for observations, you're right, every organisation is different in terms of KPI measurements they make, but more importantly, it's actually, they continuously change slightly as well. And how do you look at that short, medium and long term, right? How do you get those gains? And when someone go through it. Priti, what about you for your organisation? How do you measure, all right, a success of a transformation program?
So since I've always worn a business hat and I'm now partly business, partly transformation and all that blended role, I think for me, if the rest of the CXOs are at the forefront of asking for this change, it is demonstrating real business growth. Now, the business growth may not be revenue billing and those PBTs and the financial growth, but I'm saying that the leaning into the organization for the change is working, because they're going to start asking for more such things. That could be simplifying the way we work at one end and enhancing the quality of the outputs. And outputs could be, like I said, could be PBTs, could be client delight, could be employee delight, these kind of variables. And the inputs could be the simplification, which is what the process or the technology will enable. These are two ways I'm trying to focus my energies. I'm learning my old way of thinking to saying, how do I start putting these KPIs and discussions forward to get the mindset shift from the CXOs saying, okay, come on, Priti, you're going to finish this by this milestone. Can you start doing this now? That brief not generating out of me, but out of them.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Yeah. And again, it differs, right? From organisation to organisation, what's personally matters as well from us all. Seema, coming across from your client base, what are you seeing people? What are the types of metrics you're seeing organisations utilise in terms of measuring success of any transformation project?
From success of transformation, I guess the main question that a lot of business owners and business leaders would look at is this transformation going to keep my business relevant tomorrow? How is it going to help my business stay relevant in the current environment? And how do I keep improving my business in that during that phase. So I guess that is one of the biggest questions that you would like to answer from a digital transformation point of view. But also, what is the adoptability of this transformation? Is it top down that I am imposing downwards? Are the team members working with me in this journey? That is the other other KPI for that. I guess the moment these two questions are answered, then you find that the other KPIs of profitability, of reducing time, employee satisfaction.
We might have just lost Seema there.
We might have lost Seema.
We lost.
That's great. Well, while we wait for Seema to come back, Chris, do you want to sort of have your point, make your point on the metrics?
I can kind of carry on with Seema's ones as well, though, because actually she was spot on in terms of the I think the metrics to measure it after the event, they're all present, right? And they're always a really good way of kind of saying, hey, we delivered everything, and the KPIs were there, and whether it was a top-down or bottom-up delivery, everyone can celebrate that it was on track and on budget. I always find like go lives of any solution, if it went well, to be an anticlimax. Because if everything's delivered effectively, and if everything goes, actually the business impact and what you observe should be very minimal. So actually I've worked with a lot of people in project management that always feel quite deflated. You go live, you press the on button, then nothing really happens because it's all working automatically, and everything you prescribe to happen happened as part of any change program. So again, like that's not the stuff that tends to be obsessed about. I think most people, and I think Raj will attest to this, and Preeti, is you only really know it's gone very wrong if you're starting to only be halfway through the project and be asking to double the budget. It happens, because of course there's unknowns, but that's a really important thing. But how do you measure it was a question. And like, if I go back to my view and my passion is people centricity around everything that's being delivered. I've seen some really good organizations. I've worked with some law firms. I've worked with some retailers. I've worked with organizations where when they're delivering a change program that affects people, they survey them. And it's as simple as they would do in customer experience, where you press a little button when you go through an airport and said, how was your experience today? Green smiley face or red angry face, But I've seen organizations do almost like an Amazon marketplace scoring. So how would you rate the outcomes from this, that you were involved in the change program? And you very quickly see who had a great experience, 5s, and actually need to double down and work out why is someone saying that, because it might be that you've messed something up as part of that journey. So sampling your people is the best way of understanding, at a technology standpoint, what went well. And I think that like surveying is the best way of making sure you don't just set out to get buy-in at the outset and then forget about the people at the end of the project. And that for me is really important as kind of people leaders, and also as transformation owners, is you can miss that bit. You can get so wrapped up in the go live and delivery of any technology that you forget to measure the people you set out to achieve the change for. And I just always finish on that point, really, in terms of what you're trying to achieve, in terms of understanding that was a success at the end of it, has to come from people's perspective, not from necessarily the CEO or the board.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Well, unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time together today, and what has been an absolutely riveting conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, a lot of understanding from the why of why we do why these projects are turning, to a little bit of the how, to a little bit of the challenges, and to how we constantly measure success. I'm not so sure about the red and the green buttons and the anger buttons for everybody, Chris, but I'm sure surveys do have their point. They work, right? And they're really, really good on this. I'm not too sure how many offices would want to go around putting red and buttons on them, but we'll find. We'll go through. But that is today. I would just like to say thank you to our guests and our panel. I hope it's been extremely useful for everyone. The session has been recorded and it will be available to everybody over the next 24 hours to be able to access it. And we'll also be putting it out on our YouTube channel. So again, finally from me, thank you once again. Chris, thank you for attending us while we go for a storm, because for every audience, both Chris and I live in an area where we're having a storm at the moment. I've just been watching some of my garden furniture run across the garden as we've been on this call. So my next job will be to go and rescue that. But just to say thank you very much. Have a fantastic rest of the day, and thank you for joining us today on this session. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raj.
Thank you.